I'm so happy to welcome Lisa Snyder to the podcast. She is a state licensed psilocybin facilitator, digital strategist, and passionate advocate for plant medicine, women's liberation, and the self-healing revolution. She has over 25 years of experience in digital strategy and relationship management, and she currently serves as the Director of Marketing and Digital Operations at InnerTrek, where she helps to drive community-based initiatives and communications for the Psilocybin Facilitator Training School, which is where I trained, and the Portland-based Service Center. In this episode, we dive into Lisa's roots in media and technology, how mushrooms have helped her with parent loss, the role that she played in helping to pass Measure 109, and what women's liberation and feminism means today, a little bit of which I think will surprise some of the listeners. So without further ado, here is my lovely guest, Lisa Snyder. All right, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad we were able to make this happen. We had to reschedule because we are human and things happen. But I'm so excited to have you on the show. Feels like a long time coming. And I have found myself gravitating toward this one question to open up each show with my guests, which is, can you share a little bit about your roots, where you come from, what your childhood maybe was like, and how your inner child is still alive today? I think it's just a nice way to kind of paint a little bit of background for our audience.
Sure. Thanks for asking. So I currently live in Portland, Oregon. I've lived here for 10 years, but I was born on Long Island, and when I was 5, I moved to New Jersey, and my dad worked for CBS television my whole life, so I always have had like production and technology interwoven into my life, and I learned very early on how to push buttons and to like not fear technology, and to embrace it and to be excited by it, because there's always something new on the horizon. And we had a big satellite dish in our backyard in the 80s, and I learned how to like program it so I could watch Disney Channel and all kinds of really interesting things. We had a scanner when they first came out. We had the internet when it first came out. And so I just learned very early on to like embrace technology, and a lot of people lean on me for that, which I love it. It's really fun for me. And it allows me to stay connected to my dad, who is deceased, as is my mom, and to continue to help people in places that are not their strengths. And I think I'm here to help people liberate themselves from all kinds of things. And one of them is technology. Another thing is like emotions, and that's sort of the work here with facilitation. But I would say I feel really blessed and privileged, and recognizing my privilege in growing up in a very loving home, and both my parents really supporting me and supporting my creativity, including when I wanted to like wear crazy stuff, which is also my inner child coming out, like just expression and embracing that fun part of life that we get to have in the physical. So there's more there, but like parent loss has definitely become a big important part of my life's story, and something that continues to weave in, because I lost both my parents to cancer. My dad before my 23rd birthday, the day before my 23rd birthday, and my mom when I was 27. And I was present for both of their transitions, and it made me very curious about what is after this life.
Yes, I've seen you share that is a core area of interest for you, supporting people with grief, and then specifically with parent loss. And you're so young to lose both your parents now at those ages in your 20s, when you're still so, I feel like, deep in your individuation, like as an adult. And I lost my father when I was 20 years old. My mom is still alive. And I'm through my relationship still with my mom, I'm realizing how that relationship just continues to evolve throughout your life if your parents are still alive, and for sure grieve that aspect of it. Losing that with my father, I just like wonder, it was so many years ago now, but I do wonder how, had he remained alive, how that might have shaped me, but also looking at cultivating that relationship in a different way now. And for sure, I would say that the pain and suffering that I experienced with my father's death was the it's really sort of the crux of what um, I think opened me up to working with psychedelics in the first place, was sort of seeking some sort of healing from that. Would you say, how did you first get interested in psychedelics?
Well, I took myself on a trip to Amsterdam after my dad passed. I think it was about a year and a half afterwards. And you can buy mushrooms legally there. They're called truffles, and that's where they loophole currently. And or maybe not so currently. I don't know. That was a while ago. And I had no information. I did zero research, probably like a lot of people do. They just are like, I heard mushrooms are fun. And then I ate the entire box. I have no idea like what the dosage was, but my plan was to go to the Van Gogh Museum and go see art. I thought that would be really beautiful. Like that's what I just assumed mushrooms would help me to do, is to have like a fun time. Well, I spent like 6 hours in my hotel room. That was my container. And I talked through a lot of stuff to myself. It could have been 6 years of therapy, but it was 6 hours. And I really processed my dad's death in that time and processed a relationship that had also died, and realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I had a full-time job at a production company, a woman-owned production company in Manhattan. And I just felt like this calling to shift, that I was meant to do more than what I was doing. And maybe the timeline for them is like they needed to do more than what I was like capable of. But I was just my realization about these things. Nobody told me that or anything. I was just like, I think it's time to shift. So that was my first time doing mushrooms. When I came back from Amsterdam, I put in my 2 weeks notice at my job, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my career, but I just knew I had to go. And it wasn't bad or anything. I just was like, time to shift. And so, yeah, I like leapt into entrepreneurial life. And in fact, I had for 18 years up until like 2 months ago worked 100% for myself since that moment of mushrooms. So that was the first time. And there was a significant second time that is really important, I feel, to share. Another time where I thought this will be fun, and it wasn't fun. But so like moving and important in my life, a major turning point. But I was at a music festival and ate mushrooms. It was dark out and I lost my friends, and I definitely thought like I started to have a bad experience, like the darkness and the negativity, and I thought people were like out to get me, and like I just wanted to get into a place that I would feel safe. And so I went into my tent. I literally thought I was going to die. I didn't like feel physically I was going to die, but I was dying inside. And I was like, at that shifting moment, my dad in spirit form came to me, and I only knew it was him because it felt like him. Like I never had an experience like that before. I felt like a warm hug, like a hug that I hadn't felt in a long time. And he communicated like to me telepathically or whatever it was, that my mom wasn't going to be here much longer. I needed to spend more time with her. And it was a very specific message. And so I took that information and I was like, wow, I just thought he meant I need to spend more time with her. But I also heard the message of she's not going to be here much longer. And so it's very specific. And so I planned a birthday party, invited my mom. Normally I was like a young person. I might not have invited my mom to the party, but I did. And she ended up leaving that party not feeling well and went to the hospital. And that weekend she was diagnosed with leukemia. And so I took that information that my dad gave me with the mushroom journey And I was like, oh my God, I can hold on to hope that my mom's going to make it through this, but I have to accept maybe from this point that like she's not going to be here much longer. And she died 8 months later. So those two mushroom experiences for me changed the trajectory of my life, changed what I care about, why I'm even doing anything I'm doing. And it made me more brave because we're all going to, none of us make it out alive. I'll just say that. And
Not at least not yet anyway. There's the whole transhumanist movement, but
well,
what do you pay, death and taxes that you can bank on those things.
yeah. So I be in its simplest form, like live life, enjoy my life, be loved, and have fun, and to help other people to achieve that.
Wow, that's beautiful purpose right there. Just to realize like the most important things in life, really, that we sometimes can get distracted by other things, right? In this life. But wow, those are two really powerful testimonies of what psilocybin containing truffles or mushrooms can do, and how it reminds me of a kind of a saying we have in our community that you don't always get what you want, but you get what you need in those journeys. And we're not always consciously aware. Of course, now you probably counsel your clients to set an intention and to very intentionally cultivate a responsible container for opening up their psyche. But yeah, I would say like some of my early experiences with psychedelics too are really more from a place of curiosity than anything. And but then yeah, and also I think it highlights another crucial concept that even though a journey can be very challenging because psychologically you are going through an ego death of sorts. Like it's hard to, I think ego death as a concept or as a phrase is bandied about. And I don't know that before I started working with psychedelics, I would have fully understood what that meant. But how it can be a harrowing process, and yet, and hence the importance of, if you're not familiar with these, that kind of territory, to be held in a safe container with a guide is highly recommended, or at least with trusted loved ones. But how, although you would not necessarily wish for that experience or set that intention, that on the other side of that is tremendous transformation and expansion and liberation and a recalibration of what is most important to you. And just, yeah, it's amazing to hear that the message to spend time with your mother came from your father, and the way that you describe how it was communicated to you kind of on this more knowing level. It wasn't necessarily with words and like your cognitive or like the logos part of your brain, but it was just this message that I for sure have had that experience too. It's incredible. So sounds like that what has inspired you to move into this work with facilitating these journeys for other people. And you've been involved in the movement here from the beginning. Can you share a little bit more about how you got involved with Measure 109, the statewide ballot measure that legalized in a historic vote in November of 2020, legalized adult use of psilocybin, facilitated adult use in the state of Oregon? Can you share more?
Yes, I would like to say I've played a small role in its support, as so many people did. A lot of people supported this measure, and I just want to thank them and acknowledge them, and especially, Tom Eckert, his late wife, Cherie Eckert, and Nate Howard. Really, like, those three people really saw the vision. Especially Tom and Cherie saw the vision. Nate, with Nate's support, helped to kind of like organize it. Because when you want to have something happen politically, and make laws and stuff, like, that's kind of a crazy thing to navigate on your own. And most people have these ideas and don't do anything with them, but Tom and Cherie did. And Nate, did have him on your show. He's very.
I'm gonna hit up Nate next.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He's changed so many people's lives in such a positive way, and mine is included in that. And yeah. So I co-founded a cannabis community called Togativity in 2015 and launched it in 2017. And it really very rapidly became something that was kind of like wildfire. It was like, here in Oregon, I care very deeply for women's liberation and wove that into my work with cannabis. And with my technical skills, I was able to like market, build our own membership website, and kind of like execute on being able to quickly communicate to people in our community about things we care about. And so a lot of states were just coming online or just passing bills in regards to cannabis. And so there was a lot of partnerships that we would establish with these other, and they just reach out to us because they were like, we want to support you and we would love for your support over here. And by the time, I guess, the measure rolled around, we probably had over like 30,000 engaged, mostly women, and had been involved in like the consumption law, or invited to the table, I should say, in regards to like speaking about and advocating for cannabis consumption law. And so that from that place kind of developed some relationships. I also know Nate from cannabis because he is the co-founder of East Fork Cultivars. And that's, he wears many hats as well. And so we kind of knew each other from these places. But when the measure, I guess, was like coming PSI 2020, Nate specifically invited me kind of to this roundtable of stakeholders, if you will, in Oregon to like help spread the word about PSI 2020, which was basically getting signatures so that it could become a ballot measure. And anything we could do. So basically I kind of took that like meeting, and there's actually a picture Nate has where he's like doing his selfie of the people at the table, and I would love a copy of that because it's just such a like moment in time. But everyone kind of dispersed energies, and what we did was anytime PSI 2020 wanted to collect signatures at our events, we invited them to do that, and they would do that. They were at our very last pre-pandemic event on February 29th, 2020, before we knew about the pandemic, and collecting signatures. And so that was like one puzzle piece of what we could offer. And then the other thing we did was send emails, because then we were in the pandemic, and then it was like, we can't collect signatures that way. So they shifted to digital signature collection. And we sent emails to our community about that. And there was another ask that was about getting Canamom names to like sign on to the voter pamphlet of like, we support this measure and here's why. Because like the mom voice is actually very powerful in cannabis because it's moms, and moms are judged a lot. And so, yeah, so we got 63 Canamom names to commit to writing their names next to the word, like, we support this movement. And, of course, anybody I could tell verbally to, I did. So, like, that was my contribution to the movement in that moment of what I could possibly do with my resources. And then everybody else kind of rallied around in their own ways. And they were able to collect enough signatures to make it a ballot measure. And, of course, I voted yes on that. And we encourage people to vote yes on that as well. that's the background to my contribution to Measure 109.
Well, thank you for your public service. That is, I love how humble you are in terms of saying how you played a small part. I think you played a large part in leveraging your the community that you had built around cannabis, huge community of women. And I love that you tapped into the mom contingent. And I feel like that is a voice in not only the cannabis space, but in the psilocybin space, just plant medicines in general, that really could use more amplification. And we all know the role that mothers play in our culture, and the the outsized importance really that a mother plays in every human's life on the planet.
Everyone thinks I'm a mom.
Yeah, yeah. And plant medicine certainly helped me be a better mom. Certainly more, I'm served by plant medicines more than and alcohol, that's for sure. And that sort of thing. So so you voted yes. That was in 2020 of November. And then you are now, we'll fast forward a little bit, involved in InnerTrek services. So Tom Eckert, who went on to found the InnerTrek Psilocybin Facilitator Training Program. And that I was part of the first cohorts of students who come through. You were in the second cohort, I believe. And now there is an InnerTrek Services Center in downtown Portland that you are helping to get off the ground, and you're facilitating as well, facilitating group ceremonies, it sounds like, as well as individual ones. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. And you are particularly passionate about women's liberation, which I am too. And what would you say is an area like within the grand scope of the women's liberation movement, which, we can trace back to, I don't know, how do you really trace it back? Maybe to women's suffrage as being the beginning of it, the feminist movement. Like, how do you think about the identity of being a feminist today?
Yeah, some think of it as like a word that they want to associate with, don't want to associate with. There's like a lot of fear around it, which is really curious and interesting to me. And at one time in my life, I was scared of even using that word or like identifying with that word, but I don't. I very much embrace it. And to me, it's not about power over, it's about power with, and our fight for that. And our power, our fight for equality, to feel and be equal to one another and to be treated that way. Like all humans should be treated with respect and equality. And there have been many like puzzle pieces with the women's liberation movement. And a lot of people, have different sections of that, because there's a lot of white women pioneered certain aspects of the feminist movement. And then there's like energy around that and feelings of not being acknowledged or included in that early on. And that's carried over. I just want to acknowledge that. There's like a lot of work to still do in inclusion of all folks who want equality for women. So yeah, so there's like these different moments in time. A very significant moment in time, and many significant moments in time, was the 70s. And I'm not like a feminist historian, although there are many amazing ones out there. However, there were a lot of changes in the law, and there were a lot of changes. I mean, when Roe v. Wade passed, this allowed for women in its simplest and most complex form to have body autonomy. And that was a ripple effect in creating women's spaces, festivals, celebrating women's music, being able to buy your own land. Like, you couldn't do any of those things. You needed a man to co-sign. And in fact, there's like with credit cards and bank, I don't know how, like, what laws got passed when, but one of them was in the 80s. You still had to have a man co-sign for a credit card or something like that. And so we're actually still really early on in our women's liberation movement. And, I'm an out lesbian and I have been since 1999. And so most of my life, I haven't really been centering men in my experience because I don't depend on it for procreation or like, taking care of my life. And so I have this part that's also privileged to that because I think some women would love maybe not center men in their life, but they like can't because of like biology and like whatever hormones. And the desire to like procreate and have babies and have that life, So I don't have that. So I just recognize that's part of my lens. But I think it's also like really positive thing because I'm looking at things from a completely different place. And so there's so much like weight to like women's liberation, but it's like, what is it really? It's like feeling like you're not living in a box inside your own body and life, in its simplest form. Like, how are you feeling like you're in some kind of prison, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically? And so many women are in abusive relationships. So many women don't feel like they can leave those abusive relationships because they depend on these other people to pay for their life or to have the resources or knowledge about how to like change your life. And then there's something as like maybe as simple again and as complex as like self-esteem. Like, what gets in the way of us actually feeling good about ourselves? What gets in the way of having fun, having joy flow through? What is out stuck? And to be honest, like, we live in a patriarchal society that was made for a certain type of person, and we all contort ourselves to try to work with it when it doesn't feel authentic. And I think it's creating mental illness. And I think it's creating a lot of the discomfort we live in every day, but we haven't been able to name it. Like, why am I feeling this way? And there's lots of little tiny reasons and big reasons, but the big, big, big reason is the system that we're living in. And we, I guess we could live on an island somewhere, and some people choose to do that. And some people choose to unplug from society because they can't handle it. But what is it really? The biggest pressure is the patriarchy's values constantly bombarding us and demanding us to match those values.
You opened up a wonderful Pandora's box there. I feel like there's so many threads to pull on there. You got my mind thinking about all those different threads. Yeah, so if we talk about the women's liberation movement and also this like very loaded term now, patriarchy and all of that stuff, right? There's the social, political, and economic equality of women under the law, which it's wild that you bring up that bit of history that as late as the 80s that you said that women couldn't even get a credit card without a man co-signing with it, co-signing for it. Like that would be maddening. I would, not like to live in that world. And I'm very grateful that we don't live in that world, that we can be independent in those ways I just mentioned. But there's still, we are it's a blip in our evolutionary history and civilizational history of time that we have been experiencing the level of freedom that women, at least in the West, and that's something that I really want to acknowledge too, that there's so many parts of the world still today that don't believe in educating their daughters, or where women don't have the same social, political, economic equalities of the men in those societies. So yes, it is a very new endeavor, and while in the West we have achieved a lot of those advances in equality, there's still lingering mental oppression, really. So it sounds like that's what you are kind of touching on, that a lot of the oppression that women, at least let's talk about, Western women in for now in this conversation, or at least women in modernized societies, liberal societies that have liberalized all of this, that the oppression is oftentimes mental more than anything. And so that it's, yes, an area that where, psychedelics, to weave it back to that, really can help to loosen up and dissolve a lot of the constructs and conditioning and patterning that we've inherited that are still very much alive in our culture. And with the neuroplasticity that's available after a journey to rewrite some of that conditioning and patterning the stories, and actually, to allow you to live out the liberation that is possible. That is possible now today for us women. That was not possible just a few generations ago. And I think about that all the time, especially in my mother's lineage. My mom is from South Korea, and they liberalized even more recently, really since the Korean War. And in Korea, in the time of when my mother was growing up, she was born in the 1950s. So when she was coming of age in the 70s, it's still very patriarchal. And my grandmother didn't really resented paying for my mother's education because she was a daughter and she didn't really see the point of it. She was just going to be married off into another family and take care of, her husband's family and not take care of her own. And that was the system of social security in those societies, was through your son. And yeah, I'm so grateful that we don't live in a society like that anymore. And so, yeah, like I think that I for sure identify, there's definitely a part of me that identifies with feminism in that way, especially since it is a project that's still very much underway in the world. I want to move a little bit more in the direction of this. You share a lot of wonderful content on TikTok, actually. You're on all the different platforms, but I checked out your TikTok and I'm like, let's see the side of Lisa that we get over there. And I would say it skews a little bit more towards in this area of relational health, which I think is possibly, a core interest of yours. Can you share a little bit about what is it to live relationally? What is being relationally healthy mean to you?
Me, it feels like, and I'm a Libra with a lot of Libra. So I just want to preface it with that we are obsessed with relationships. And yeah, like I'm not like a relationship expert. However, being a Libra, you become like the person that people come to you about relationships because you are constantly managing relationships and being aware of where something is in a relationship. So it's just sort of my nature. I just want to like preface that. And I'm not perfect. And I'm constantly learning how to be more, continue on my self-awareness journey about like what is working and recognizing what's not working. And then how do you deal with the things that aren't working? Because there's always going to be something that doesn't work. And how do you ask for what you need from the other person? And how do they ask for what they need? And I think a lot of times we bend so much for the sake of a relationship when it really doesn't benefit us and we're just benefits the other person, but maybe it benefits us out of safety or comfort. And like there's other benefits that are actually like about the relationship, but are about like our own comfort and safety. And so especially going through training, getting even more in tune and in touch about when you do something, is it for you? Is it for them? Like very simply with clients, And that's really kind of this next level of like everything is now through this lens. Am I doing something because I actually want to do it or because it's for me? Is it a gift? Is it something I'm trying to like receive? Am I able to receive? There's so many layers here with like how we relate to one another. But I know for a fact we are here to learn lessons. Many of us learning many lessons. Some of them we love, many of them we do not love these lessons. But they're like the building blocks for like everything else. You always learn what you like and what you don't like, and what you love and what you don't love by these contrasting moments in life. So I really try my best, as best I can with the tools and resources I have available to me, to have good relationships with people. And what is a good relationship? It's like a relationship that feels good. And I'm still learning like what to do when something is a little funky. Like, do I take action? Do I accept it? Do I back away? Like, that's still something that I'm kind of like learning. When is it healthy discord and when is it really not? And it's time to like exit the relationship. Those are all really good questions. There's also patterns when we become more self-aware, whether we're doing psilocybin journeys to get there or we're just meditating or we're just living our lives. Like there's patterns to recognize in ourselves and how those patterns play out with other people and how are we trying to feel better overall in this life. And I felt really grateful. My wife and I have done a lot of work, continue to do work every day. It takes two people in a relationship to relate to one another. And that relational question that you asked before, it also translates to not just like having a video call with somebody or seeing somebody, when you go to an event or you're at work or something. It's like text messaging is relational. Email is relational. I think everybody kind of turns stuff, especially in business, into like a transaction of some kind. What are you giving me? What am I giving you? And everything is about that. And it's like so much deeper than that. But we get so used to like we're very busy. There's a lot going on. Sometimes we have to be transactional. Maybe that's fine sometimes. But in psychedelics, what I've noticed is that everything is relational. Every experience with others, whether they work in the space, or, thinking about being in the space as a client or what have you, it's just like more space to feel, more space to think, more space to be. And that is something that I really appreciate actually about being in the psychedelic space.
I feel like that goes back a little bit to what you touched on earlier with living in a man's world, like the song. It's a man's world. Maybe we'll open up the episode with something like that. But I think what psychedelics do is, open up possibilities that we haven't really considered before. And we do live in this fast pace. To me, a lot of what people who are struggling with various mental health issues, it really is struggling with how rapidly technology is marching forward and living in modernity or post-modernity, and navigating this world and how fast-paced it is, how it doesn't really honor our natural cycles, or it feels dissociated from the natural living world in a lot of ways. And I ask the question all the time, what would it look like to live in a world that honors the feminine cyclical principle of, life moving in cycles of contraction and expansion. And, if you just look at women's physiology in a hormonal lens, and, the fact that female bodies cycle with the moon every month, and how that's not always compatible with the modern masculine way of, having a 24-hour hormonal cycle rather than a 28-day or hormonal cycle. So, and yeah, along with that is shifting, or at least waking up to how deeply relational, yeah, everything is. Like, I think about the Buddhist principle of being in right relationship, and how right relationship means, in right relationship with ourselves, with others, of course, intimate relationships, but also with plants and animals, and just in the web of life on the earth. And yeah, like how relationships are a beautiful mirror for our own growth, as challenging as it can be. I do want to ask you a little bit about, with your wife, um what tools have you found to be most useful as you navigate relational health in your marriage together?
Well, honestly, recently in the last couple of months, it's been microdosing mushrooms. Not for me though. I don't here and there, but I don't it's not my daily thing. But like she's recently discovered in like the last 2.5 years that she's just on the cusp of the autism spectrum. And she has since living here in Portland, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, diagnosed with ADHD, and was on a medication for quite a while. That was just really, to be honest, it was just torturous when it came to like relating, because it was like there's some filter here with the pharmaceuticals that is actually not who I married, and how do we handle that? Like, is this who you are now, or is this the medicine? And so she actually, when we got to that point in our relationship, we had to really reflect. And it just so happened that like microdosing was a conversation because school, because of going to InnerTrek, and like just what is it, and like how does it help, and just learning a lot about it. And so she actually ended up stopping her medication. That's not something that you'd recommend for everybody, and definitely talk to a professional before doing. But she, for her ADHD medication, she was like, let me try getting off of this and replacing it with a daily microdose. And that has shifted so significantly, because the way that autism can kind of play a role in like everyday life is like going from 0 to 60 in the nervous system, like being surprised constantly, and like having the spike of energy that is like unexpected, and that was like constantly throwing us off. And I was just like, I do not know how to handle this. Like, and that's before we even knew what it was. And still, when I did know what it was, I was like, needed to learn and educate myself a lot about it. But like, since then, the microdosing the mushrooms have actually helped her to like shift her brain to love herself more, and to not judge herself for the things that she's experiencing in everyday life, which is now allowing for more space for us to be like, like laughing about something versus getting like into a conflict about it. And that's huge. Like being able to not take yourself so seriously and be like, oh my gosh, that's just how I am. Or like, thank you, I'm sorry. Like, there was all this tension all the time because of like feeling defensive about it. Not me, but like in her experience and my experience with her, it was just like I can't get anywhere, So it was that turning point. And so with the relationship with that, I mean, we always try to just acknowledge as quickly as possible when something weird has happened. And the timeline used to be months. We would go months and like something weird happened, and like we're just moving on, and pretending nothing happened, and that builds up to resentment. So we've had to hit a couple of those roadblocks along the way, and just be honest, and like as quickly as we possibly can, we really just try to repair. And that word repair, I actually don't even, it's a simple word, but I didn't really even know really truly what it meant until we went through InnerTrek training.
Amazing. Wow, what an amazing story. And also how great InnerTrek training has been. Like, wow,
That's
how it just
good.
as you dive deeper into psilocybin medicine, and it just opens up more doors, and you see the healing that happens in your own life, and how your intimate relationships are such a potent, powerful teacher for all of this, and how it becomes I sincerely believe it becomes a medicine that you can then offer other people who are experiencing what you have experienced and moved through, personally, because you have that lived experience. Um, and I just have a question, about did she, stop her pharmaceutical medicine and then start microdosing, or was there a period of time where she kind of used it, what was called as a bridge therapy for coming off to help her with tapering off? How can you share a little bit about that process? Or
She
I don't
just
know if
cut
she would want to.
cold turkey. She cut it, and I was really surprised, and that was not what I was expecting. I thought we would be on like this, transitional period where it's crossing over or something like that. And maybe there were a few times where she did that just to be like, I don't know, what her daily experience was, but I know for a fact that she just like, once she started microdosing, she completely stopped taking her ADHD medication. And immediately I felt like she came back to life. It was like very apparent, like night and day almost, with the way that she was relating to me in our interactions. And I didn't feel that like holding on feeling that I was like, what's gonna happen? Like, I feel like, and we've had to navigate autism. Like, what is that? And what kind of triggers happen? And what kind of environments are not safe or comfortable? Or how do I help you in environments? And we're still navigating that, but like yesterday was a great example actually, because she's been on it now for over 6 months, like microdosing. And and yeah, she like thought she was going to have like the morning off, and she has her own business. And it's a coffee cart. And sometimes she has to work in service, and sometimes just she had the morning off, or thought she had the morning off, but she got an alert that was like, where are you? Where are you supposed to be? And a previous version of her would have been like panicked, like would have been like upset with herself for like not knowing or whatever happened. I don't know where she looked or didn't look or what change happened, but like being upset with herself and like being angry maybe. And yesterday she came and she was like, this is huge, but I wasn't even mad. I was just like, okay, gotta go do my thing now. And I'm like, that's what's up. Like, how do we help ourselves to like have a better experience and not spike our anxiety every time something happens, or just be living at that level all the time? It's like exhausting. And so, um, yeah, we're in a much better place today.
I'm happy to hear that for the sake of your marriage, and also, um, that also just that little anecdote that you shared resonates with me, because some of us, I feel like autism spectrum or not, there can be a really loud inner critic that if there is, if a mistake happens or a misunderstanding, or, I mean, that stuff happens. That's part of being human, right? That's of life, and uncertainty and change and all of that, that there can be a flow with it in a way that is just so much healthier than this like rigid, just tough inner critic, perfectionism, however you want to characterize it. I feel like that so many of us struggle with that. And the beauty of this medicine, macrodose, microdose, however you choose to engage with it, just loosening that, quieting that voice, or just like creating some distance between yourself and that voice, and also not catastrophizing or I heard actually a really interesting podcast. I believe with a psychiatrist. I believe his name is Paul Conti, and he's based here in Oregon. but that the long-term side effects of these medicines used to treat ADHD can lead to profound personality changes that you are describing, and including being one thing that one characterization that really stood out to me was being deeply suspicious that actually can go really high, amongst other personality changes, which was all news to me. That wasn't something I was educated on. These medicines are incredibly prevalent, and I don't hear that discussed as much. So yeah, it's a really powerful again, testimony is just anecdotal. We don't have good studies to really back this up yet, but to show the power of what can shift with mushrooms, with microdosing. Um, yeah, and so it sounds like you take your learnings with your wife and you share little tidbits and whatnot, and how yes, we are all just humble learners along the way. But that's really cool to hear. Um, we are coming up on time. I wanted to give you an opportunity to touch on anything that just feels alive for you right now as you do this work. What has really lit you up recently in terms of psilocybin facilitation work and just what's going on in this space in general?
Well, yeah. Women's liberation work, as you now know, very, very near and dear to my heart. And helping women to like recognize that there can be more to life than whatever it is that's like keeping them stuck. So the last couple of journey experiences really have been some some you know significant shifts for women in their awareness of self and how they can have better relationships with themselves and others have been like a common theme. Um, there's been some like grief letting go. There's been some like awareness of like having a better life than their mother had, than their grandmother had, a lineage and you know, like stuff that can kind of come up during a experience like that where you're like just very aware of your ancestors and those who've come before. And yeah, like how can we love ourselves like 1% better today and tomorrow, and just try to keep trudging along on that journey. Um, and, anybody who's like, in the LGBTQ space, I am specifically like living lesbian life. That's my lens. That's not the same as somebody who might identify differently. However, it all comes back to like feeling better about yourself and feeling more comfortable with yourself. And what does it look like to be like 1% more comfortable with yourself? And like, I just asked one of my clients the other night on a integration call, like, what would it feel like to be fully yourself? Because they were talking about pretending a lot with other people to get them to like them. And obviously that takes up a lot of space when you're trying to do that because it's not really who you are. So like who is that person? What would it be like and what would it feel like to be truly who you are? That's what I always want to know under the surface of all of this, like we're always trying to express, repress in different spaces, and with our partners, those who have them, we might feel more able to express, hopefully, or in certain places. Like sometimes people love going to these festivals. They're like, I could just be who I am. And then they come back and they just go to like their regular job and they're like hiding a part of themselves. It's like, what part of you are you hiding and why? And like, could you wish for something to feel different, there? So like, that's always something under the surface, whether it's women's work, whether it's LGBTQ folks who like maybe struggling, and there is a population of people who, they thought they were this way and they realized they're not, whatever that means. They were like, I tried on this personality, or I tried on this living this life this way because I thought that's who I was, but actually I'm really this. And it's all an exploration. We're never the same person who we were yesterday, even. So allowing yourself to evolve and learn from that evolution is really important. And I welcome conversations about neurodiversity. I'm learning along the way, but I've also lived life and have for 14 years with my neurodivergent wife, and we're learning how to live life. And there's a whole layer there of a lot of women are now discovering that they on the autism spectrum and never had any idea about it because of masking and the pretending that can happen to like contort yourself into this box that we have to live in, and the expectations that we put on each other of how we interact socially is a big puzzle piece here. So and then there's like the creative entrepreneur lens, which I come from too. I wear many hats. And there are a lot of people who are stressed out, who are also super amazing creative people who like, maybe they want to like birth something amazing into the world and they have no idea how, or they're like, I have something to give here and I can't get past this like point. There's many ways that we can feel better and in our lives, which will help us to like have better relationships with ourselves and other people. And I'm here for it.
Yes, you are a Renaissance woman of sorts. That's what I feel like has always attracted me to you, because you do wear all those different hats and you have just this multifaceted, persona, really, like all these different ways that you express yourself, which I find really admirable, and in widely different areas, whether it's tech and entrepreneurship, like you said, or feminism, or all the different spheres that you wander through. And it's really beautiful to see you continue to weave all of those together, to integrate them together, to honor all of those sides of you, and whomever works with you. I'm just so excited for them. I'm sure that you will be attracting a diverse clientele, which is really cool, right? That you get to kind of, you never know who's going to feel called to work with you, but I can vouch for you and the work that you do. And so grateful for everything that you do in the world. So grateful to have crossed paths with you, and just excited to see how things evolve in our community here and throughout the digital sphere as well. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you. This has been so fun, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing to like help folks tell their stories and like their perspectives. And this movement really needs people like you to create the container and the platforms to like, show what is happening behind the scenes in this movement. It's really important work. So thank you.
My highest excitement and deepest honor. Hello, beautiful people. If you enjoyed the episode, please do hit that subscribe button so you can follow along for more. And it would really light us up if you could leave a comment or a review, maybe share something that really spoke to you and resonated with your heart, or share the episode with a friend or a loved one, or simply hit the like button. And if you're interested in learning more about our work with ceremonial mushroom medicine that's fully legal here in Oregon, please do visit our website at www.eleusiahealth.com. That's ELEUSIA health.com.